Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Bamboo Panda Bear, and I'm going to be sipping on some coffee. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so what I'm going to be using for my materials today is a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, burnt umber, which I'll call brown, green oxide, deep yellow, and ultramarine blue. And of course you can switch those up if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a 9-inch paper plate that we'll use to draw a circle, but you could probably figure that out. And I've got a standard number 2 pencil, and I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 8 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 1 round synthetic brush, and I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well if you'd like to. And if you're painting along with me, you'll probably want to have a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to even the fancy paper plate. That'll all be in there for you. So that's there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to do for the first step is we're doing an outline of our panda bear. We're just going to be doing a basic shape for the exterior of the bear and its head, so we can color in the block colors for it. We're not even going to do the ears or any of the little details yet. So you're going to want to have your pencil and your paper plate, or whatever you like to use to draw a big circle is totally fine. You can even freehand it. I'll show you where mine's going to go, and then if you want to freehand yours, you're more than welcome to. So I've got my paper plate about 2 inches from the left side of my canvas and about 2 inches from the top of my canvas. So it's set to the left and up, and all I'm going to do is I'm drawing myself a circle right around it. So if you were doing it your own freehand, you could do the same thing. You could say, okay, well, I'm about 2 inches from the edge, and then measure over about 9 inches, and then 2 inches from the top, measure down, and then just draw yourself a big, huge circle. And then you can, get rid of your helping aid if you had one. And then I'm just going to use my pencil to draw the exterior sides of the bear. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to, if this is about my halfway point of my canvas, I'm going to come below that about 2 inches, make myself a little bit of a marker. I'm going to connect this to the side of this circle in through here. So what this is going to represent is the back side of the neck, and then a little bit of the shoulder in through here. So I'm going to start about, I would say, if this is where it kind of starts to curve over into the halfway mark, that's where I'm going to start to bring it away from that initial circle, and I'm bringing it down in this just kind of drifting, arcing type of a line. And then when it gets down almost as far as here, maybe a little bit shy of there, that's when I'm going to just kind of bump it out just a little bit to give you the insinuation that this is the shoulder area of the animal. And I'm just going to bring it right down to where my marker is. And then on the right hand side, I'm going to come and make myself a mark that's about 2 inches lower than this one. So if you go from here and just come down about 2 inches and go straight over to the right hand side, that's about where I've got my marker involved. or located. And then it's going to meet the head about halfway between here and here. So somewhere about here, you can just kind of come over to the side. That's where I'm going to be coming out of there. And this is going to represent the side of the arm and maybe a little bit of the side of the body, so to speak. So I'm going to come down this way. I don't want it to be super straight. I'm just going to give it a little bit of movement in through here, maybe a little bit of a bump in through there. And that's all I'm going to do. I don't really need to do much else. I'm going to just kind of make this go, make sure that kind of enters into that circle nice. And then we are going to be using our large brush for the next step. So you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our background. So this is going to be this area in through here. I'm using my large brush. My dominant colors that I'm going to be using are green, brown, and white, but I'll also use a little bit of yellow and maybe a little bit of black if I want it to look a little bit on the grayer side in any area. So my goal here is just to make it look out of focus, like it's the out of focused forest or meadow, wherever he's finding these bamboo shoots to eat. It's that out of focus behind him. So I'm going to start with a little bit of green and brown and a touch of white on my brush. I'm going to be applying this in a circular type of fashion, so it gives it that out of focus type of look to it. But you could really utilize any brush stroke that you would like in order to get this on here, as long as it remains kind of consistent throughout the entire section. So if you want it to look more natural, you'll want to give it a systematic kind of brush stroke. Like I just picked up some green and white, and I'm going to continue using that circular type of brush stroke. I'm going to make mine maybe a tiny bit lighter up towards the top and maybe a little darker as it's around the bear, so the bear pops out a little bit more, and the top makes it look, if it's lighter, it'll make it look a little bit more like sunshine is up there. But I don't want it to go too light, because I want you to be able to see the bear in front of it. So I know that the majority of the head of the bear is white, but there'll be a little bit of gray in it as well. But I don't want the sky to be too light where you kind of lose the exterior look of the bear. So I'm making sure that I've got it a little bit on the darker side. And as you can see, I'm just kind of alternating these colors. If I want a little bit of a gray look, I just put black and white on my brush, and this will give me a little bit darker of a gray type of look if I wanted. You can mute it, you can add a little bit of green or a little bit of brown to get those colors to turn into more of a natural kind of forest type of look. So you can just really enjoy the process as you're going through this and making it into whatever out of focus type of scenery that you want it to be in. I am using this circular motion and kind of overlapping these colors as I go. So that way, again, they blend in with one another, but they're not necessarily all turning into one solid color. So I just kind of keep alternating these colors. Like again, I just picked up yellow and white, and all I'm going for is something that has these nice natural neutral colors in it, and it doesn't turn too light on me, but still has that bit of sunshine maybe at the top. So that'll give me the insinuation that up top is more towards the sky, but you can again turn yours into whatever tonal value that you'd like. Maybe yours is under the canopy of a whole bunch of bamboo trees, so maybe your background is a little bit darker than mine, so you can utilize that thought process. And again, I'm just kind of using the corner of my brush to get these to all look like they belong together. I have not washed my brush throughout this process, so that way they do end up looking, I've got remnants of one color on my brush, and that just helps to add to the illusion and gets the colors to talk to one another a little bit more. And I'm going right up to my pencil mark. Sometimes I'm even bumping into it. It's all right if you bump into it, because you're going to have a lot of other information along the edges of the bear. So that way, if you bump into it, that's quite all right. You're going to have some fuzzy fur around the edge anyways. You just want to make sure that you personally know where each piece is. And then we're going to be utilizing the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your background all nice and done, you can certainly add another layer to it if you want to tweak it at all. We're going to use this same brush for the next step, so you'll just want to wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer for our head. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I already have paint on it because I've pre-mixed myself my color. We're going to be using a gray color. So what I did, I've pre-mixed it so you can see where I'm going, but I'll show you how I got there. I used, the majority of this color is made up of white, so I used a good amount of my white. I'm not going to make too much more here because I need to save some of my white for later, but I used white with just a dot or just a little bit of black and a little bit of brown. So I like to have my gray colors kind of on the warmer side, so I usually like to add a little bit of brown into them so they're not too cool looking. Sometimes the black and white will make it look a little bit on the cooler side, steering more towards like a bluish gray. I like mine to be a little bit warmer. So I'm going for this tone. I know that my gray is going to turn a little bit darker as it dries, so I am planning for that. I want it to end up to be just a medium kind of gray. It's going to be the undercoat for all of the white fur that we're going to have. So once you've got the color that you want, you're going to utilize this large brush. We'll color in the middle of the circle, but I want to show you what to do around the edges. We've got to give a little slice of the light fur around here. So I came, if this is about halfway down my circle, I came maybe about 2 inches down from there. That's where I'm going to have the neck kind of merge its way into the back of the body in through here. So I'm just kind of taking this and giving it a little bit of a gray section. I don't necessarily need it to come all the way down to the bottom, but I'm giving it a little bit of a gray section in through here. And then when I go towards the edges, the exterior edges of the head, I'm going to bring my brush and just kind of give it a little bit of, a lot of paint on my brush right now, a little bit of fluff starting right around those edges. So I'm not doing much, but I'm making sure that I bring it all the way out to my background and giving just a tiny bit of fluff around those edges without giving it a solid line. And it can really go in any direction simply because the hair on the panda is nice and short, so we're just really giving it a little bit of the fluffs starting right now by bringing these edges just a tiny bit out past, and not all of them, just I'm using the corner of my brush just to kind of pull them out just a little bit past that pencil's edge. And then the center area, it doesn't have to be any specific brush stroke. You could do dots, you could do circles, you could really do whatever you want to get that paint on in that center area, because this is just going to act as the base coat for it, so it doesn't have to be a specific brush stroke. But if you want to kind of keep it systematic throughout the whole thing, if you're using kind of a circular brush stroke, go ahead and use the circular brush stroke throughout the whole thing. And when you get down to where it's meeting in through here, that doesn't have to be perfect either. You can also start to make a little rough edge as you come along here, but you're going to be doing a lot more fur along this edge later, so I wouldn't terribly be too concerned about what happens along this edge, because we've got to put the mouth on and we've got to put the fur underneath and all kinds of good stuff. So don't worry if you don't get the evidence of individual pieces of fur coming down here right now. And then we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can just wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. Okay, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the base coat for our ears, our eyes, and our body. So it's all going to be done with black paint and my large brush. I do want to forewarn you though that you want to make sure that this section is dry for when you are doing the eyes. So you know, this is that time where you get to take that extra long break if you'd like to. Or you can find a fun fanning method with a paper towel, or you can blow on it, or you can take out a blow dryer as I did and just get it dry that way. So whatever way you want to do, go ahead and do that. And we're going to proceed with that large brush and black paint. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to start with my ears and I'll just work my way down to the body. So I'm just taking my large brush, putting a little bit of black paint. I don't need a lot of black paint at this point because I'm working with some small areas. So I'm going to have my bear is kind of turned looking that way a little bit. So I'm going to have my ears a little bit different from one another. I'm going to do this one up in through here. So if this is about the top of my head, I'm going to come to the right, maybe about 1.5 to 2 inches. That's going to be where the bottom or the top bottom part of the ear is. Then I'm going to go maybe about another 1.5 inches this way. So I'm going to have the top part of the ear is going to come all the way up and kind of go up towards the tippy top of my canvas. And then this side is I'm going to be utilizing the corner of my brush to give myself the little pieces of the exterior hair on the right side of that ear, just kind of coming up in this curved little fashion, getting up to the top of that ear. And then I'm just going to color in the whole center with a little bit of black paint. When it gets to where it's going to meet the head, I'm just going to kind of bring my brush in just a little bit so I don't have a clean line where it meets the head. On the other ear, if this is about halfway in my circle, I'm going to come to the left a little bit further, maybe about 2.5 inches. That's where the right side of the ear is going to go. And then I'm going to go maybe about 2 inches over here, 1.5 to 2 inches here. I want this ear to come into the head a little bit. So I'm going to just bring this in just a little bit because we're going to see more of this ear than we do of that ear. That ear's on the other side of the head. So I'm going to bring this in just a little bit, maybe about 1/2 inch to 1 inch to make sure that I've got that fur of the ear coming in. And then I want it to go all the way almost up to the top of my canvas, but I don't want it to be a solid line. So I'm going to do a similar brush stroke to what I did at the edges of that. And I'm going to just kind of pull my paintbrush out. I don't have a lot of paint on my brush right now. I'm not utilizing a lot of paint for the exterior of the ear. When I go to do the interior of the ear, I can use a little bit more paint on my brush, but right now I'm just kind of using the remnants on my brush to get these little fluffy pieces coming out of the edges. And of course you can extend them as far as you want. And then in that center, that's where I have more paint on the inside of my brush. So I just kind of push my brush a little bit harder to get it a little bit more solid on the inside. And of course you can keep fluffing these out, and we'll have more fur that we're going to be putting on them that will help to make them look a little bit fluffier too. And then I'm going to give myself a couple of areas where the eyes are going to go. So I'm going to reload my brush with a little bit of black. And again, I don't need much. So what I do is I take my brush, I kind of squish it in the paint on the side of my palette. So what happens is my bristles become in control because they get flat, and I wipe off that extra paint that can reside within the bristles, so I can keep some good control over it. So I'm going to have my eye patches somewhere in this vicinity, and again my head's tipped a little bit, so I'm going to be utilizing that same brush stroke around the exterior of them to give them a little bit of fluff. But first I'm just going to kind of put them in shape. So I've got this one starting, if this is kind of the right ear, maybe somewhere just directly below there, and maybe about 2 to 3 inches away from the edge of my canvas. And then I'm just going to give it a little bit of a curve in through here. This is going to meet the nose. It's going to come down in through here, and then I'm just going to kind of kick it out along the edges to give it that little bit of a fluff around the edge, around that right exterior edge of it. And when I was looking at these panda bears, they all have kind of different shapes to these eye patches. Some really have large shapes, some have smaller versions. So if yours turns out a little bit different than mine, it's okay, because that's the nature of this beautiful bear beast. And then on the left side, well, our left, his right, I'm going to put this one maybe about 2 inches away from that one. So it's almost in the middle of the head is where I'm going to start it on this side. And then I want to give it a similar kind of thought process, giving it this inside curve This will be where it meets the nose area. And then I'm just kind of using the corner of my brush to give it this little exterior fluff around the edges. And I'm going to bring it up in through this area. And then what I'll do is I will color in the center of it with just some black paint in through here. And of course you can make yours a little bit fluffier or a little bit smaller. And if you make them too fluffy or too big, know that when we go to paint in the rest of the information on the bear, you can certainly tweak it at that point as well. And then I'm just going to load my brush with a ton of black paint and I'm going to paint the whole rest of the canvas. The only part here that would be a little bit more controlled is where you're going to meet the face and through here. So this is where I'm going to start to get these two to intermingle with one another. So I'm just kind of wiggling my brush in a little bit of a chaotic way as it's meeting that other fur. But again, this is just the base coat, so it does not need to be 100% executed at this point, because you're gonna be putting all of the detailed information on it in a future step. So don't worry if when you're getting towards that face, if it doesn't look like you have every single piece of bear fur in place, because we're going to be adding those details on later. But I like to sometimes just get the party started and make sure that I don't have too firm of lines when I'm doing fur that I know is going to be overlapping one another. So that's why I'm doing it just in a little bit more of a rough fashion around this particular edge in through here. And then as I come onto this right side where it's going to be the exterior of the body, I'm just going to make sure that I've got that a little bit more on the fluffier side as well. And again, doesn't have to be perfect. We're just making ourselves a super cute panda bear here. Yours might be bigger or smaller than mine, or fluffier or more tame looking than mine. It'll be all right. Your bear is going to be your bear. My bear is going to be my bear. And then once you get this all done, we are going to be switching to our small brush. So again, I'm just kind of using a good amount of paint throughout the on my brush throughout the majority of this area down and through here. No special brush stroke. It is black paint. You're not going to be able to detect the brush strokes by the time this is over. If you want, you can also paint the edges or the sides of your canvas. That'll wrap your painting right around the edges and make it look nice and professional. And then you can put this large brush away wherever you would like. Take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're painting our eyes, our nose, and our mouth. We're gonna use our small paintbrush, and the colors that I'm using are brown, black, and white, and I might use a little bit of yellow in the eyes too. So how I'm gonna do this is I'm just gonna kind of lay out where I want everything to be, and then we'll just kind of make some details on top of it. So we've already kind of figured out that our eyes are going to be within these patches. I'm going to put my nose and my mouth in place right now to kind of lay those in, and they'll be drying while we'll go put our details in the eye, and then we'll come back and put some little details on it. So I'm going to use my small brush. I'm going to start with just black paint, and I'm going to put my nose in place. So the nose, I've got two little markers already here to give you where the tips of my of the left and the right top side of them are going to be. So this one's going to be maybe right where you have this, the farthest end just kind of come down, maybe about an inch or two from your chin and just over just a little bit. And then this one is going to be almost in the middle of where your eye is going to be, and you can just kind of come down at about the same height. So these cute little noses kind of, to me, look like the top side of them was like the top side of a heart. So I'm going to give myself a little bump in through there, and then a little bump in through here, and then they just kind of come up and curl up along the edges of the face. So I know that mine's going to be tipped a little bit, so I put the center a little bit to the right. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if this is going to be the center of my nose, I'm going to just bring this down maybe about a half of an inch, and then I'm going to connect it to the exterior corners, something like this. and then connect this with my exterior corner. So it gets the widest down at the middle. And then I'll just color it in with black paint. Once I've got that colored in, almost looks like a set of lips, actually, of human lips once now that I'm looking at it in this kind of silhouette, but it won't look like that when we're done. And then what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna put my mouth on. So I'm gonna come straight, or from the center of where my nose is, I'm gonna give it a little bit of a curve to the right, something like this. And then I know that my right side of my mouth is kind of gonna be hidden with the fur and stuff like that over here, but the left side is going to come up in through here. So I'm bringing this pretty far down. My mouth is going to kind of come out like this. I'm going to leave a little bit of my chinny chin underneath there so I can put some little fluff on that in a bit. I'm going to bring the corner of this just a little bit past my nostril in through here. And then on the left hand side, I'm going to bring this pretty far up the head. I'm going to bring it past where my nostril is in through here, or my nose, and then I'm going to bring it up in through this area. I'm not doing a firm line. I'm really just kind of doing a loose type of line so that way it won't look too solid. We'll be putting fur and stuff like that on top of it, but right now I'm just kind of giving myself a loose, sketcherly kind of line. While that's kind of drying, I'm going to go ahead and put my eyes in place. So I'm going to wash and dry my small brush. I'm going to put brown, a little bit of brown, and I think I'm going to use a touch of yellow too. So brown and a little bit of yellow on my brush at the same time. I'm going to put the colored part of the eye on. These eyes are like a little bit of an almond type of shape, and they're very small compared to their body themselves or their head themselves. So I'm just going to put a little like almond type of shape in through here where the top corner is up here, the bottom corner is down here. I'll do the same on the other side, and I'm not using that much paint, so this way it will dry pretty darn fast. And again, just like a little bit of an almond type of shape with the inside corner being down. I think I want a little bit more yellow on this one. And I know that I've got a black background behind this color that I'm using right now. So I know that it will dry darker than it is when it's wet because of the black background underneath it. So if you feel that you want more color in them, you can certainly just kind of keep adding to those layers. But when I was looking at these, they didn't seem like the color part of their eye was very dramatic. So I'm not doing much. Now I'm putting a little bit of brown and white on my brush, so I can put the, I'm going to call it the eyelid on. So a little bit above the, where you just put the colored part, I'm putting white and brown on my brush and just giving myself a little bit of an eyelid in through there, and then a little bit of a bottom eyelid as well in through here, just in a pretty subtle way, nothing too dramatic. I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing on this side, but I want to be able to see it. So if yours is not evident and you need it a little bit lighter, go ahead and add a little bit more white to your brush. So I'm adding a little bit there. I'm going to add the eyelid up here so you can see it up top as well. And I think I want a little bit more brown on this one in through here. And then once I have those on there, let me just kind of elevate this one just a little bit more just to make sure that we can actually see it. There's no point in putting it on there if you can't see it. So again, just a little bit in through here and a little bit in through here. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the sparkle on the eye. So I just wiped my brush off on my paper towel. I put a tiny bit of white paint on my brush, and I'm going to put a little bit of a sparkle up in the top of each one of the eyes. Once I put the sparkle there, I'm going to wipe my brush off of my paper towel and put a little bit of water on my brush as well. And this is where I'm going to just kind of pull out a little bit of this sparkle just to give it almost like a little bit of a haze on the eye. And if you needed to, if you wanted to put a little dark mark for a pupil in the eye, if you felt that it needed a little bit of pupil, you could certainly go back and grab a tiny bit of black paint and just darken up some of that area underneath. So you can really just kind of keep tweaking them. We'll be putting the more fur around here, which will make them look a little bit more natural. But I'm going to go ahead and put a little cute pieces in the corner of the eye, just added a little bit more white and brown to my brush. So for me, I always feel like I'm getting a little bit more cuteness in the eyes the more sparkly parts I put. So if I put little bits of hair or skin in the corners of the eye, or a little bit more sparkle on the inside of the eye, that always just brings them more to life for me. So if I want a little bit more lightness in the eye, I can bring in some more of that yellow and the brown, just get a tiny bit more life in it. And again, the panda bear eyes, you don't really see much of the detail to them, so don't feel like you have to go hog wild with them. And if you've gone too much, you just bring back a little bit of the black to get some of that deepness in there. And then for the nose, really all I want to do is kind of lighten up the tippy top of it. So I'm going to use some brown and white, mostly brown, and I'm just going to add a little bit of a highlight in through here, not right at the edge, but something that's a little bit away from the edge that's going to imply that there are a couple of nostrils in through there, maybe a little crease in between. You can add, and again, I'm just using white and brown, but you could certainly bring in any additional colors that you'd like to if you wanted to. And then I'm going to just kind of rub in the brown that I have on my brush just to kind of get this area with a little bit more dimension in it. And again, we'll be doing more in this area as well, but that just kind of helps to get that, start the form of that part. And then on the mouth, I'm just going to put a little bit of white and brown and give myself a little cute bottom lip. So I'm just going to kind of give a little highlight in through there. That's all I'm going to do. So the next step, we're going to be using our large brush. So you can put your small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to be doing for the next step is we're doing the shadows on the face. So what this is going to do is this is going to add the shape and the form to like where the nose goes, and the definition between the cheek, I guess is a good name for it, and the back of the head, and maybe some little bits around the eyes. So I'm going to be using my large brush. I will be using my base gray, brown, and white. And if I feel I want anything to go a little bit darker, I might use a little bit of black, but I will let you know as I do that. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a little bit of my original gray plus a touch of brown on my brush. So this is going to help me to lay in where I want these to go. I never need a lot of paint on my brush. Think we're in fur mode now. So we don't need a lot of paint on our brush, just a little bit of paint. We're going to be using almost like I'll call it a dry brush type of technique, where we just are adding little pieces of fur, and these ones are going to be darker. So my fur for my bear is going to be soft on the nose, and everywhere else it's going to kind of work its way out from the face. So when I'm in through here in this separating spot where it's going to separate the head from the back, I'm going to be using this kind of almost a arcing type of brush stroke going towards the back side of the bear in through here. So this is going to provide me with a little bit of separation from the head to the back of the animal without going too dramatic. So because I'm using that original gray, I'm really just taking it and making it a little bit deeper with that bit of the brown in it, and when it dries it will take on a nice darker look to it. I'm going to do the same thing as it comes up towards the ear, because I feel like it's going to get a little bit darker in through here. And again, if you wanted to, like I'm just picking up a tiny bit of black right now to make sure that this transitions well into the ear. So when you're going into areas that are going to be transitioning into one another, you can certainly pick up a little bit of that underlying color as well. And then I'm going to, the whole head part is going to be really pretty light, so I'm not going to add any darkness onto that. I want to add some darkness around the nose. So my nose is going to be kind of, think of it as where the exterior of the mouth is. That's in essence kind of the width of it. So I know that I'm going to want some of this shadow coming out from around that mouth area. And this shadow, again, is going to provide the textural information as well as the form of the face. So I'm putting some little shadows in through here, but I don't necessarily want to put a lot in through here. That's going to be my lighter area, but I do want it to kind of talk to this little fur in through here. So I'm adding a teeny bit of black paint onto my brush just to make sure that my shadow kind of talks with this little piece of fur as well in through here. And again, you can make it as light or as dark as you want. I have hardly any paint on my brush right now. Just going to put a little bit down in through here. And this is where I'm going to start to cross over into this bottom area where the chest is going to be meeting. Maybe a little bit more over there. And then I'm going to go ahead and come up on this side with my brown and a little bit of my gray. And if I have any remnants of that black on my brush, that's totally fine. And this is going to separate on this side it from that nose area as well. So just putting a little bit of my darker shade in through here, kind of crossing it over a little bit into that eye patch area, making sure I'm putting my brush in the direction that I want to, which is kind of coming away from the nose in a little bit of a curved fashion. And I think I want to put a little bit above those eyes too, just so it looks like they're kind of sunken into the head. So I'm just using very little bit of paint on my brush. I'm picking up more of my original gray right now with my dirty brush. So this is going to allow me it to be a little bit darker, but not terribly, not a bunch. And I'm just kind of giving myself just a little bit more of a touch of a deeper color in through here, but not much at all. Just something that's going to be a little bit darker than the brightest of the bright that we'll be putting in a minute. And let's see, I think that's about it. I don't really need any up top. I've got enough on the, oh, maybe a little bit by the bottom part of the nose in through here. I'm going to just kind of tap in a little bit of darkness underneath here. Yeah, there we go. Because we're going to have, the nose is going to be a little bit darker underneath here because I think that's the dirtiest part of the panda where he eats. So that's going to have a little bit more grit on it and through there. And then we're going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your shadows on your face, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting on our panda arms and we're kind of finishing the bottom part of the body. So I'm going to be using my large brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, blue, and white. And how I'm going to do this is I'm going to kind of get these arms to emerge from the body just by putting in a little bit of lighter fur. So pandas will typically have, most of them I saw have like a big white belly, but we're not going to really see that because there's going to be a whole bunch of the bamboo shoots and stuff that are going to be at the bottom, and his arms are going to be pretty close to one another. So we're just going to leave the main part of the body black, and if we need to add any little details to make it look more like fur, we will. But what we're in essence really doing is just putting an arm coming in through here. So his shoulders over here, his elbow is right around here, and his little paw, I think they're big paws, is going to be right in this area. And then this one, the shoulder is here, so the arm is going to take up the majority of this area in through here. So how I'm going to start this is I'm going to start with just brown paint on my brush. So I have brown paint. This is going to give me kind of my roadmap as to where I want these to go. Because I'm working on a black surface and I have brown paint that is translucent, my brown will almost disappear when it's dry, but I like to use it just so, one, it will add a little bit more dimension to the fur, and two, it's a safe way to give myself a roadmap for this fur. So I've got my paw, I want him to look like he's eating, so I'm going to have kind of my paw in through here, and the arm itself is just going to kind of come back in through here. So I want the top of it to be in through here. So that's in essence the shape of it. What I'm going to do now with a little bit of black, brown, and blue on my brush is I'm going to start to put the fur in a direction that makes sense to me. So to me, it makes sense that the fur is coming down like this, and it's going to kind of curve around here. I will make this exterior line kind of disappear just by pulling it back up and through here. The blue is going to help to make this look shiny, so I'm just utilizing it in this initial step to put some of that dimension in place. But I really just want the highlight of the top of the paw to be the focal point of it. I don't really need the bottom part to be evident. However, you as the painter will want to know where it is, because that's where you've got to kind of end your fur. So this is how I'm going to just kind of start this one in through here. I think I might want to bring this a little bit further down just so I know where it is. I've got it started, and I'm going to go ahead and I think I want this to be up a little bit higher. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm just kind of telling myself how do you want this to be shaped? And right now I'm creating that shape with these dark colors, so that way, again, it's on the safer side. I can get this to kind of blend in with here, and I know where it's gonna be in through there. I'm gonna do the same thing over on the left-hand side. I didn't wash my brush, I just picked up some brown paint to just give myself a start here. So again, this is gonna be kind of my shoulder in through here. This is the top of my arm in through here, and I want my big paw to kind of end in through here. So this in essence is the entire arm that I'm kind of outlining right now. This is the top of it, this is the interior of it, and the exterior just kind of fades off into the darkness over here. So now I'm going to take my black, blue, and brown and just give myself that initial layer like I did with the other arm. So I'm putting my paint in a directional brush stroke on how I feel that fur would be coming off of that paw. So in through here, I think it might kind of come over in this direction, and then when it kind of turns this corner here, I feel like it would probably be coming off the end in this direction. So that's where I'm leading my brush to go. And again, right now I'm just using my black, blue, and brown as my colors. So this again is going to get me to have my own kind of roadmap again, and telling me where I want those light spots to be and the size of the paw and stuff like that. So now that I've got them in here, they're really not terribly difficult to do. You just really want that fur to fade off into the darkness, wherever that darkness is. Before I start adding my highlights on here, I'm going to just make sure that I have my interior fully finished. I can see some white spots in through there that are not making me happy, so I'm going to just make sure I've got those areas painted. So I'm picking up a little bit more black just to get, I didn't wash my brush, so if I have some remnants of the blue and the brown, that's okay too. I'm just going to kind of make sure I've got this whole interior painted, kind of bring it up in through here, make sure I've got, you know, a nice little rough line as it meets the bear in through here, so you can pull up a couple of extra pieces if you want to, and pull up a couple in through here. So this is helping me to get that transition into the face nice and natural as well. So I'm just kind of tidying up around the edges of the face, making sure that I've got everything painted on in through there. And now I'm going to start adding my highlights. Again, I don't really, in through this area is going to be all hidden. Now that I know where my paws are, I know where my highlights are going to go, and I've got my interior painted. Now I'm going to start still with those brown, black, and blue, but now I'm going to also introduce a little bit of white as well. So I'm going to do it cautiously. Again, brown, blue, and black are the colors that I have on my brush. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of white paint. Not a lot, and I'm even kind of tapping it on the side of my palette or on my paper towel. I can always add more, but it's tough to take away once it's on there. So I know that this is going to be my paw in through here. So I'm going to take and I'm going to start just adding these little bits of the lighter fur on top. And I don't want it to look like it's white fur. I just want it to look like it's lighter black fur. So that's where the blue helps to give you more of that shimmery kind of silver look to it. The brown is going to help neutralize it, make it look a little bit more on the natural side. And of course your black and white is going to be your traditional. That's what happens to black when it gets lighter, is it turns into like a light gray. or a lighter version. So I'm just going to kind of keep adding these little bits onto here. I want to bring it down as far as I feel that paw or that arm hair is going to go. And I can always bring back some of the darkness too if I feel like I've done too much, but I want to make sure that it looks like it's big enough, you know? I mean, this is a big bear, so I want to make sure that I've got enough information on here that tells the viewer how big this paw is, but I don't want to get it too light. So you're doing kind of a delicate dance as you're trying to get this fur on here without making it too bright, keeping it in that black vicinity, but still making sure that you've got enough highlight on there so somebody understands, or the viewer understands, what they're looking at. So I'm just going, you know, on the slower side, making sure that I've got all of the information that I want. And again, I know that because I'm working on top of black that it will get a little bit darker as it's drying. So I'm just gonna keep watching it as it dries and seeing if I want to add any extra or take any bit away. I definitely want a little bit more where the paw is reaching the mouth, because that's definitely going to be a point of interest to the viewer. So I'm just adding a bit more lightness in through here, making sure I have the volume on the paw that I want. So this is going to be probably my lightest area of the paw in through here, just so you know, again, it leads the viewer to understand that this is the part that's closest to the sky and has the most light shining on it, and it will definitely give the form to the information to the viewer. So that's looking pretty good, and I might tweak it a little bit more after it dries, but I'm going to go ahead and start working on this other one in through here. So blue, black, and brown with a teeny tiny bit of white paint all on my brush at the same time. Again, I have it in place. I know that I probably want over in through here to be the lightest, and I don't want to bring my highlight all the way to the edge. This is just going to be the part that pops out the most and is going to be the closest to the viewer. But I want to make sure that the viewer understands the entire shape of the paw, so I have to bring some kind of color to the whole thing, so it, you know, the edges are visible or implied in a sense. So you can just kind of keep playing with that, and you can even, as it gets towards the interior, if you want to give it a little bit different of a texture, you could just kind of dot your brush a little bit. You might not always see the same length of the fur, or you might be seeing the fur from a different angle, so it might take on more of a speckly type of shorter look to it, as opposed to the longer look that you might be seeing on the edges of the fur, where it's the closest to the viewer. So you can certainly, you know, again, play with the texture a little bit, but you don't necessarily want it to go too different, especially when it's on the same piece of body. If it's, you know, it would realistically have to go in a natural order from short to long, as opposed to just one section is short and the next section is long. So you can certainly play with that kind of stuff all you want. I'm going to add a little bit more information to the brightest part. So I just kind of keep elevating that brightness as I see fit as it's drying. I'm going to add that probably the brightest of the bright right now, and I'm just kind of using the corner of my brush and almost kind of tapping and pulling it towards me. So that's giving me a little bit of the roughness to it, but it's also giving me some sense of a couple pieces that might be a little bit on the longer side. And I'm trying to get it to gradually go a little bit darker as it's, you know, going towards the top or towards the inside of the bear itself. And then again, just kind of making sure that I've got enough brightness where I want there to be. And I know again that a lot of this is going to be disguised or hidden a little bit, so to speak, behind the bamboo. So I know I don't have to make this 100% rendered in its fullest form, but again, I do want to make sure that the viewer understands how large these beautiful paws are. They've got to definitely look like they're going to, you know, be of the right size to feed the head that we've created. So you want to just make sure that you've got yours as full as you want to. And then again, I would just kind of keep tweaking this as it's drying. I might, you know, just let mine dry for a minute and add a little bit more, but you can certainly bring yours into whatever brightness that you would like. And then we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful fur on here, I think I'm adding a little bit more blue and brown here. Once you've got your fur on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're gonna do for the next step is we're finishing our head. So I'm gonna use my large bristle brush. The colors I'm using are, probably use my original gray, black, white, blue, and brown. Oh, and maybe a little yellow too, if I wanna add a little extra sunshine. So this is gonna be similar to how we did the arms, where you don't need a lot of paint to accomplish the textural effect that we're going for. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to kind of add some of my important details first, which would be some extra long little pieces around the edge of the bottom of the face, some little extra details on the ears and maybe around the eyes and maybe around the mouth too. And then when I go for the rest of the head, it's going to be kind of a free-for-all, have fun doing it, but all the while kind of maintaining some control while we do it. So I'll talk our way through it. In essence, what we're doing is we're getting these dark areas to work their way into the rest of the fur and add that final textural element to it with the brightest pieces on top. So I'm going to start down in through here with my longer pieces of fur or hair or whatever you'd like to call them. So I'm going to be using, because I want them all to look like they belong together, and I know down here does not need to be white, white, white. My lightest areas with the white are going to be on the nose and the top of the head. So when I'm down in the darker region down in through here where it would be underneath his face, I'm going to be using some of my brown and my gray as well to get those pieces to be in play. So I'm going to use a little bit of white, a little bit of my gray, and a touch of my brown. And I'm going to squish my brush on the side of my palette. This is going to help me to get these longer pieces to just kind of work their way into and overlapping into the chest fur. So this is going to help give those more realistic pieces to be evident. Same thing with over here on the side. So I'm really just kind of using the corner of my brush. I want to make sure I have enough paint on my brush, so you'll see that I reload often, but I'm really just using the corner of my brush. I want to make sure that I have these almost individual type of pieces coming out, and I don't need them all to go exactly in the same direction. So you'll see me kind of flicking my brush left to right to get those pieces to work their way. And I'm just going to go right up to where I'm feeling that mouth area is going to need some fur, so something like this. And I'm going to go ahead and give myself some little long ones coming out in through here. And you can see I'm giving different lengths, so that way they look more on the natural side. To over here, I think it would be a little bit darker as well. So just kind of giving myself a little bit of these longer pieces overlapping as well into that shadowy kind of area. So it looks like they're kind of all growing together, and they just work well together. And if I feel myself pushing my brush too hard, like I just felt myself pushing my brush too hard, which is going to give me wide pieces of fur, I ended up reloading my brush, because I know me, when I start pushing my brush hard, that tells me that I don't have enough paint on my brush, so I needed to reload. So I'm gonna now just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I got that difficult kind of area down at the bottom. I'm gonna go work on those ears. And I didn't wash my brush, I just wiped on my paper towel. I'm gonna add a little bit of brown, and I'm just going to go with the remnants that are on my brush right now, because I don't need to do much here. I just want to add a little bit more fluff into the edges So something that's a little bit lighter, it's got a little bit more texture to it, especially on the exterior of, you know, where it meets the sky, that part in through there. And I think over here, just gonna kind of add these little bits of fluff, a knot in the center, just kind of on those edges, just to give myself a little bit more information. So again, I have hardly any paint on my brush, maybe a little bit more coming out in through here. I just added a bit more lightness to my brush to give myself a couple of little pieces that overlap in through there. And then I'm going to, before I go into my having fun hog wild for the rest of the head, I'm going to do these little pieces inside the eyes, so, or in the patches. So I'm going to wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I don't want a lot of paint at all, so I'm just using the light remnants. You could even add a touch of blue to emulate that little shine to it, but really all I'm going to do is just kind of take the corner of my eye and give just these little bits of fur right on top that are going to show that there is some dimension to this fur. And you could certainly use your little brush if you felt that you wanted this to look a little bit more organized and have a little bit more structure to it, but I'm just adding little bits of fur on top of there. And you could even do it on the top area too, or if you felt that you wanted to extend your patch area, I just put a tiny bit of black paint on my brush as well with the gray, so I can just kind of extend it a little bit if I wanted to with both of those colors on there. So you're just looking to get it to have a natural kind of transition into from the patch to the fur, to the regular fur in through here, more so on the outsides than the inside, because the inside is going to be your nose portion. So I think maybe we just need a little bit of the light fur right around the nose here too. Just before I start going too much into the lighter paint, I want to make sure that I've got the rest of these areas tackled. Right along the nose, I'm using the gray with a little bit of white on my brush just to kind of give a little bit of speckled kind of look above that nose and around in through here. I'll put a touch of white on my brush now without washing it to just give myself some of these little pieces that kind of overhang the mouth a little bit, and they're just kind of transitioning from this darker area where the, I consider this the darker area where it's right underneath the nose. And again, I'm just using my little corner of my brush, and if you felt that this type of brush was working for you, but this one might be a little bit too large, you can always transition into a bristle brush that has a smaller width to it, and that will allow you to get the more delicate kind of little pieces to it. All right, I think I'm just about ready to start going wild with my lighter colors here. So I'm just making sure that I've got all of my areas where I want them to be. And once I start using my lighter color, I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just picking up some white paint. I'm going to have my nose really light, the top of my head really light, and I'm going to be applying the center with a stippling technique. So I'll be just kind of dotting. I have white on my dirty brush right now. So that is going to allow me to kind of progressively get lighter and lighter as I want it to be poofing out a little bit more. But I want this all to have this fuzzy type of a look. So my first pass is with my white and my and my dirty brush. So whatever remnants of the other colors I had on there is going to allow me to get this first pass with a little bit of fluff, and I'll come back in a minute and put an extra light area on it. When I get over to the edges where it's going to meet the rest of the fur, that's when I'm going to maybe just pull it just a little bit to give you a little bit of those longer pieces over on the edge, just so they almost overlap a little bit and look a little bit more natural. Going to continue with my stippling as I go up that forehead in through here, and just when I get towards the eyes or just start to get past the eyes, I'll just start pulling it just a little bit more so it turns into more the length of the fur in through there. And really, again, I just want them to kind of look nice and natural. I'm picking up more white because that was a little bit too too much of the darker color on there for me. So I just picked up a little bit more white, getting this to kind of transition in through here. And I know that I've got still some pieces of the dirty colors on my brush, which is great because that's going to help me to transition as I'm going around these edges. And I'm just kind of working my way out towards that brighter area, making sure that I've got all of my fur in the direction that I want, adding a little bit more white onto my brush now. So we're going to start to see these really light pieces emerge. As I come around on this left-hand side, I'm going to give a nice highlight on the edge of the back in through here. So I just picked up some more white, and I'm going to give myself a nice bright area around the edge of that back, which is going to tell the viewer that there's some extra sunshine back there, and it's going to give you more dimension to the body. So I'm just putting it right along the edge, but I don't want to lose the edge of the face either. So now I'm going to just kind of pull some of this out, making sure that it blends in nice with the side of the body as well. There we go. And then again, I want to make sure that it all makes sense and it all works together. So I'm doing it in a very almost kind of systematic way, moving my way up towards the top of the head. I really, at this point, have hardly any paint on my brush. I'm utilizing that under the gray that we put underneath there to help add those dimensional effects to it. I'm just using that corner of my brush and just kind of pulling out those lighter colors. I'm going to go ahead and go over here on the right hand side. I'm working my way up because the gray is working its way off of my brush, so it's going to naturally get lighter and lighter as I go up my canvas, because right now all I'm doing is picking up white right now, and that gray that is within the bristles is working its way off of my brush, which is going to get it to be brighter and brighter at the top. On the side over here, I'm pulling some of them out a little bit farther than my original head footprint. So that's going to give me that extra fluffy look around the edge of the head. And I'm just going up towards the top, reloading my brush with some white paint. And I'm going to start giving myself this brighter look up at the top. I think I'm going to do kind of a dot and a pulling. I want this to look nice and fluffy and not too long, so I'm going to do some dotting and just making sure that it kind of works its way into the neighboring fur. And I'm going to just kind of pull. I just felt myself pushing too hard, so that means reload. That's my my telltale personal sign. And I'm going to bring this all the way to the edges, making sure that it overlaps that edge just a little bit, because that lighter color that you're putting on those edges, it's going to utilize that gray underneath, and it's going to give you those extra bright little pieces. So I'm making sure that I go all the way to the edge, giving myself a little bit of a directional brush stroke on the top of the head to tell the viewer that it kind of goes back in that direction. So now that I've got this pretty much, I know exactly where all my really light spots are going to be. If I want to elevate those light spots, I can use a combination of white, yellow, and brown. I'm not going to be using any more gray paint unless I have to. And what's going to happen is I don't want to use a lot of yellow and I don't want to use a lot of brown, but they will help to make this white into more of like a sunshiny white that's more of a luminescent kind of white as opposed to a dull white. So what I can do is I can take some of my white and add a tiny touch of yellow paint in it, and without it turning a cream color or anything like that, it will just give me that little bit of vibrancy in that white. And I'm just dabbing this on my paper towel. I haven't washed my brush yet either. There will come a time where I might wash it just to make sure that I can get some really bright stuff on there. But I'm starting to elevate the the top of the nose, where I feel that it would bump out the most in through here. I feel it would bump out a lot in through here as well. So I'm going to kind of slowly transition myself into there and maybe pull out some of these pieces, a little bit longer pieces coming out the sides of the face and through here. And for me, my paint, it continues to, when it dries, it will get a little bit darker. So I know that by doing these layers, I'll do a layer and I'll come back after it's dry and it will have turned darker. So I can just, which helps me because I love to layer. So I just kind of continue to layer these lighter tones until it really becomes three-dimensional. As long as when I'm layering, I'm not painting over that first layer 100%, I can just kind of keep adding. And right now I can see that the nose is poofed out a little bit more here and a little bit more here, but I must make an effort to make sure that it also transitions into the part that it dips into. So it's kind of a delicate dance as you're building these layers, but if you can just do them in a controlled fashion and just have an end goal in mind, like I want this place to be really poofy and this place to be really poofy or puffed out the most, then that's my goal. I keep adding to the lightness in those areas without, again, taking away from all of the colors that we put underneath. And I can just kind of keep building that lightness. So right now I just keep reloading my brush with that altered white paint that has a tiny bit of yellow in it. And I just kind of keep building on here until I've got all the areas as light as I want. And you can see as I keep going around, if I want these edges to be even lighter, I can just take and just add a bit more of this luminescent white. And when I feel that I've got just about everything in place and all of my areas are really close to being as bright as I want them, that's when I will wash my brush and come in with one final pass of the brightest of the bright white. But I always want to reserve that bright white until the very end because you can't get any lighter than that. So you just have to work your way towards that and utilize it at the very end, because if you try and come in with it too early, you can't get any lighter than that. So you won't be able to continue to build it any more after that. That's it. that's the end. Once you put the white on, you can't get any brighter than white. So once I've got just about everything in as much as I want, I think I want a little bit more of, I'm still in that yellowy or that pale altered white right now. I think I want a little bit more coming up on the top of the head. And in a second, I'm going to wash my brush and go in for that final lightness with my white. But I'm just kind of tweaking this just a little bit more, make sure that I've got it just about where I want. And if you're doing this and you're like, it's just not poofy enough, it's not, I don't feel the form, his nose isn't popping out enough, you can certainly come back in with a little bit more shadow. You can even, I'm putting a little bit of brown in my yellowy color on my brush. So you could come into an area like this and just add a little bit of that brown in through there, just to maybe add a little bit more dirtiness or a little bit more dimension to it. But whatever you do on one side, just translate it over on the other side. I do know that a lot of this mouth is going to be covered by the I'm drawing a blank, the thing that he's eating, the sticks, the sugar canes, we're gonna think of that in a minute. It is the panda and bamboo. I knew I would catch it. The things that he's eating, the bamboo sticks. So there's gonna be a lot of those on there. So I'm going to, right now I washed my brush, I'm adding my white. This is gonna be my final brightness, and I don't wanna overdo it, so I'm wiping my brush off on my paper towel. And I'm gonna add just a teeny bit in through here, gonna bring a little bit up in through that nose. And again, you can see I'm really just kind of dabbing this on through here so I can elevate this color just a little bit more, but I'm not overdoing it. I wanna make sure that you can still, see the dimension throughout here. So I'm just really holding back with my control, making sure that I am not overdoing it, using the little tip of my brush And then I might actually just wait for it to dry and see if there's any more additional brightness that I want to add to it, which I do recommend that you do the same thing if you want to add some little fluffs around the ears, or, you know, some extra little fluff around anywhere. These pandas can be so fluffy and so cute. So you can certainly just kind of keep tweaking yours. We're going to utilize our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got all of your beautiful fluffy fur on here, this is going to be one of those steps that I'm going to really have a hard time stopping, but I will. You can put this brush away, take out your medium brush. Oh, he's so cute. I just want to cuddle up with him on the couch right now. And take out your medium brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing our bamboo stems. So I'm going to use my medium brush. The colors I'm using are brown, yellow, and white. And these to me just kind of look like long, skinny pieces of grass, the stems. I'm going to have a ton down in through here. I'm going to have a lot coming up on this side. Obviously, he's going to have one going in his mouth, but the leaves are going to come up on the other side. I'm going to have some in, like maybe he's holding some in this paw, so they'll cover up some of this area, and then I'll have a couple coming up the side. So I'm going to at all times have brown, yellow, and white on my brush at the same time. And if after doing this, if you feel that your medium brush is too large, you can certainly switch to your small brush to do these, because the stems are inherently on these bamboo shoot things should be a little bit more slender than the leaves themselves. So if you don't feel you're going to be able to get two different sizes out of your medium brush, then go to your small brush for the stems and use your medium brush for the leaves that we'll do in the next step. So I'm using my small brush. I'm going to have a whole bunch of stems, so I'm going to just kind of start them up in through here, and I'm going to have them crossing over one another and just kind of giving the exterior kind of look of them. They're going to be everywhere. And I'm going to have a bunch of the leaves that are going to be coming off of them. But right now I'm just kind of strategically placing some of my stems coming in through this area. And I could get more chaotic looking. Right now I'm just kind of trying to be a little bit more controlled so I can keep them on this more slender side. But as I go through this process, I might have one or two that are a little bit wider than the others, which is totally fine. And again, you could certainly go for your smaller brush, but I'm really just kind of looking for some longer, skinnier kind of pieces that are going to be intermingled with the leaves themselves. So don't worry if you end up having some really wide ones, or some ones that go in a direction that you're not really excited about, because you'll be able to disguise it with a whole bunch of leaves. So I'm going to put some on the side over here, but I feel like I want my brush to be a little bit more narrow. So what this means is I've got a lot of paint on my brush, and the paint is within the bristles themselves. So I'm going to just give it a good squeeze in my paper towel and reload it. So I'm just kind of working with the tip of my brush. This will help me to get a more slender line that I can kind of control a little bit more. And then I'm going to bring these up. And again, you can have as many as you want. These are just going to be acting as the stems. I don't want to cover up everything, so I'm just kind of being, again, strategic with where I'm placing them. I need to have one coming into the mouth somewhere in through here, so I think I'm going to put a little bit more brown on my brush, just a little tiny piece in through here so we can know that it's going into the mouth. And then we're going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got some nice stems going on in through here, maybe a couple coming out over here, you can wash and dry. There we go. You can wash and dry this medium brush. Yeah, that's looking good. That's enough. And get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the leaves, the bamboo leaves. So I'm going to be using my medium brush. I'm going to be using mostly green, but I'll also be using black, brown, yellow, and white as well. So these are just really long, skinny leaves, and they can kind of come out in little clusters, or they can kind of come out in a singular type of fashion. So I'm going to start with some green, black, and brown on my brush at the same time to kind of put them in where I would like them to go. So I'm going to be, my funnest ones are going to be the one coming out of the mouth. So that's where I'm starting. I'm going to start somewhere in through here, and I'm going to kind of push my brush pretty hard to start, and then just kind of pull it up at the end. That's going to give me it being a little bit wider as it's in the mouth, and then a little bit more narrow as it comes out towards the end of it. And I'll be putting a little bit of highlight or dimension on these in a second, but I just kind of want to put my leaves in place first. And then what I'll do is I'm going to put them all in place with these darker colors, the green, black, and white. And then what I'll do is I will come back and give little highlights and shadows throughout them all. So those are going to be my ones coming out of the mouth. And then I think I'm going to go up to the top right hand corner in through here and kind of work some off of this little stem in through here. So they're kind of a little bit wider as they are meeting the stem, and then they get a little bit more narrow towards the end. But again, yours don't have to be exactly as mine. They have definitely different shapes based on the age of them and all that good stuff. So don't feel like yours have to be exactly as mine are. I'm just kind of having some fun in through here, and then I'm just going to go ahead and add some maybe I've got some coming out of the side in through here, and now I'm just going to kind of go wild with wherever I want them to go. So again, right now I've just got green, black, and brown, and I'm just going to start maybe adding some coming off the side in through here. And you can see the stems that we put in place because we used a different color palette. You'll be able to see them as kind of independent pieces, provided we don't paint over all of them. And then I'm just going to kind of give myself some coming out here. I'm just kind of bouncing around right now just to put some into some strategic places, so that way once I've got everything on here, I think this is going to turn into a leaf. Yeah, there we go. That looks nice to me. And then maybe I'm going to put some more chaotic kind of ones coming in through here. And again, I know I have my stems in through here, but I also want my leaves to look like they're just kind of naturally making their way. They're not going to be organized. They're just going to happen whatever way Mother Nature wants them to happen. So we have no idea what is over on this right side. Maybe there's like 17, different bamboo shoots over there, and these are the ones that are just kind of making their way into the canvas. So you can really have some fun. They don't all have to just grow right off of the stem. You can really just have fun with it, and let your brush kind of take over once you've established the main ones that you want. I think that's looking pretty good. Once I add the highlight to them, that'll add a little bit more information as well. Maybe that goes like that. And then I'll have a whole bunch kind of coming off of here. So again, I'm still just using green, brown, and black right now. The black is going to help to make some of these have some good dimension and some good shadow to them, and then the green and the brown is just going to give them their base color. And then after I get them all on here, I will come back and add some little bits of highlights to them and maybe some extra shadow if I want to. But right now I'm just kind of adding them wherever I want them to go and letting them cross over one another, making sure I don't overdo some of those stems are still showing through. And then once I've got all of my leaves on, now I'm just going to start to add some highlights. So I'm not even washing my brush. I'm just going to pick up a little bit of yellow, green, and white are going to be my highlight colors. and I'm just going to kind of start adding these bits of highlights in through some of them, showing the tips of them. Maybe some of them have a little bit more shadow to them. Maybe some of them have a bit more sunshine to them. I'm, just gonna kind of have fun with adding these little streaks of highlights throughout them. And if you felt after you do this particular step to it that it needs more, you can certainly start adding little shadows in between if you wanted to, or you can add more green, or whatever you're feeling. This is also one of those steps that get it done and then sit back for a little bit, let it dry, see if there's anything more that you want to do, because again, once you've got these layers on here or these objects on here and they're laying on top of one another and they're starting to tell their own little story as they're drying, you might feel that you want some added brightness or darkness, or you want to be able to see one sitting in front of the other more than it is. So just really let it dry and then kind of come back and see if there's some extra brightness or information that you want to put into it. But I'm kind of digging the way that these are looking. They've got some good highlights and shadows, and we've got, I can see the difference between them without them looking too out of place. I'm just kind of adding a little bit more green and white to some of these, so they are green, yellow, and white, so I don't want them to get too lost in the shuffle, especially these ones popping out of the mouth in through here. And you can also, if you got the ones around the mouth done and you're saying, oh no, I can't, I want some fur laying on top of them, you can certainly add a tiny bit of white to your brush and add a couple of pieces of fur going on top of those leaves that are coming out of the mouth. That's going to make it look even more natural. And I think I'm going to do that in a second too. I just want to get some of these leaves to pop out just a little bit more. And you can see I'm just having fun as I'm doing this, and looking pretty bamboo-esque to me. So I'm going to just kind of wash and dry my brush here. And I think I'm just going to pick up a little bit of, let me make them a little bit greener first. This one is a little bit, there's almost too much contrast in them for me there. And then maybe a little shadow underneath this one. Yeah, there we go. And adding shadows between them sometimes will get them to pop out from one another as well. So that's looking pretty good. Now I'm going to add, just wash and dry my brush. I almost just stuck it in my coffee, but you guys couldn't see that. And I'm going to add a tiny bit. Good thing I told you about it though. I'm going to put a tiny bit of white paint on my brush and give a couple of little pieces of his mouth fur just kind of hanging over here. That will make it look a little bit, give it that little extra bit of realness to it. You could even do that over here on this little piece over here, and you just kind of keep fiddling with it. And if you just make any tweaks you want. If I want to see the fur a little bit on top of here, just add that in through there. I'd wait for it to dry a couple minutes, see if there's anything extra that I wanted to do. And then we have one little step left to go, and it's going to be with your small brush. So once you've got all of your bamboo leaves in place and you're satisfied with it, you can put your medium brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right. I'm going to be using my small brush. I think I'm going to sign this in the bottom left with black paint. I'm going right on top of this leaf in through here. I sign mine with my initials, but you could certainly sign yours with your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It is your painting. You sign it however you would like to. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you painted yourself a really cuddly panda bear, and I hope you enjoyed the process, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.